Regarding the use of the gentle leader on leash reactive dogs, I've met several dogs, mine included, that find head halters aversive, even with a reasonable amount of systematic desensitization and counter conditioning. You state in the lecture that applying pressure is indeed positive punishment. Is there a risk of leash reactive dog developing an even stronger negative emotional response to the trigger due to the sensation he regards as unpleasant? Is this approach strictly for the shelter environment where distance is harder to achieve and the dog is more likely to go over threshold? It's a great question. I do not use the head halter on any dog that can't get used to it. Okay, so most dogs can be desensitized to the head halter. For some dogs, it takes a week. For some dogs, it takes a month. Okay, but there are dogs that just will never get used to it. And if you've made a really good attempt at desensitizing the dog to it and it is still aversive to the dog, we can't use it. Because the whole point of desensitizing the dog to that feel of the head halter is that it's not aversive when it's just on his face. It's just a neutral stimulus, just like his collar or his body harness. Okay, so then when you need to use it to suppress any reactive behavior, it's just pressure that's, a little bit unpleasant for a second until the dog calms down. It's not harmful, but that's the whole point, right? So we don't want to use it if the dog can't get used to the head halter. Now, in another part of your question, I just want to make sure I cover all the bases depending on what you mean by certain things. Let's say the dog does get used to the gentle leader, and now you're using it the way I suggested, that you use it to suppress the reactive behavior or the aggressive behavior in view of the stimulus. And so the question is that going to make the association worse? And the answer is it could if you weren't also doing the counter conditioning. So they go hand in hand. If you so here, this is how I show it to my clients. So I think this might help. Here's the reactive behavior, right? What we have now. And here's calm behavior, what we want. Okay. So if we use a gentle leader that the dog is completely desensitized to wearing to suppress any negative reaction, and then we reward any good reaction, suppress, reward, suppress, reward, suppress, reward, suppress, reward, 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 right? We make the switch. So that's the whole idea. Suppress what we don't like, because when the dog is allowed to do it, they get their own internal reinforcement, but highly reward the opposite, the non-reactive behavior. So to the dog, non-reactive behavior is more rewarding. Okay, now if you just use the head halter, suppress, 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 and you never do the counter conditioning, not only will you not make a difference, but you run the risk of a more negative association. Every time I see a dog, I feel this pressure. I'm not allowed to act the way that I want to act. Okay, so that's why. Now, what if we don't use the head halter? Well, we don't have to use the head halter. Certainly, if a dog won't desensitize the head halter, we can't use it. The problem is, if we're not going to be able to suppress this behavior, we have reward calm behavior, and then the dog reacts. Reward calm behavior, dog reacts. Reward calm behavior, dog reacts. So the reactivity is reinforcing to the dog, so are the treats. So the dog doesn't care which one he does. And the only way it would be successful without the head halter is to make sure you control the distance between the dog and the stimulus 100% of the time. So I use the head halter for most of my clients, and I recommend it for most shelter dogs that can desensitize to it, because real life isn't manageable 100% of the time. So somebody, is out on the street, they go out and they feel like they can keep distance from the other dogs and do their counter conditioning without the head halter. And then someone comes out of their house with their dog and they're right there in their face. I mean, the environment is just too unpredictable. So I do suggest the head halter for both shelter dogs as well as own dogs because the environment is so uncontrollable. But again, if the dog won't desensitize to it, it is not okay to use it. So definitely feel that way about it. I love the head halter. It has helped thousands of my clients over the 23 years I've been doing this and using this protocol. But I have had dogs that just can't tolerate it. And that's, you just got to make the best of that and try to keep that distance